Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thereafter the Manus, the fathers of mankind, the great sages, the forefathers, the learned scholars, the Daityas, and mankind performed sacrifices meant to please the Supreme Lord. The Daityas are devotees of the demigods because they want to derive the greatest possible material facilities from them. The devotees of the Lord are ekanishta, or absolutely attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, they have practically no time to seek the benefit of material facilities. Because of their realization of their spiritual identity, they are more concerned with spiritual emancipation than with material comforts. Okay, so it's a short purport and verse, but very nice. We'll just start with the Mangalacharan, so I ask you to all join me and pray for the blessings of the Acharyas. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dharati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarunvyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pastyati Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Okay, so I was rather happy when I received this verse because all the verses so far have been rather complicated about the Purusha Shukta and the universal manifestation, and we were just on the summer marathon. I got sent through this verse and I thought, okay, Krishna's been very kind to me because it's all about sacrifice, and I can just stick to what I know and speak about Sankirtan. So that's the plan. So please forgive me if you wanted a more detailed class, but that's what I know, so that's what we'll speak about. But first, before we talk about Sankirtan, we'll speak a little bit about the verse, just go through it. And first thing, who knows who the Manus are? Hands up. The Manus. Okay, so we can just describe who the Manus are quickly so that we're all clear. The Manus are, well, actually the word man comes from Manu, so they're the progenitors of mankind there. The Bhagavatam describes in the first canto how Brahma takes birth from Vishnu, and then from Brahma he has some sons, direct sons, and Manu is one of the sons, Swayambhuv Manu. Swayam means the original Manu, so he's one of the sons of Brahma, and within a day of Brahma is a universal creation and dissolution, one full cycle. So in a day of Brahma there's 14 different Manus, which kind of prominent throughout the day of Brahma. And so the first Manu is Swayambhuva Manu, and we're currently in the 7th Manu at the moment. So we're about halfway through one universal cycle, or one universal creation and then dissolution. and our Manu is Vaishvata. Is that said right? Vaivashvata Manu. So he's our Manu. Everyone's clear what the Manus are? Okay, great. And then the verse also talks about the Daityas. I think you understand the great sages, the forefathers, learned scholars. The Daityas are demons, for those who don't know. And Prabhupada in the purport says that Daityas are devotees of demigods because they want to derive material facilities, so they worship demigods in order to get something in return. And that is a Daitya or a demon, someone who has no love for Krishna, but they just want material benefit. And generally they worship the demigods. So in the purport, Prabhupada talks about ekanishta, or this one-pointed. Eka means one, and nishta means steady or focus, with one-pointed devotional service. And this is a theme throughout Prabhupada's purports. And sometimes people get a bit confused. Like in the Gita, sometimes the verse is speaking about the sitting position and breathing exercises. And then in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about pure devotional service and loving Krishna. And sometimes people get a bit bewildered. It's like, this is not what the verse is talking about, But Prabhupada is giving us the conclusion throughout the books, throughout the Gita. He's giving us the conclusion of the Gita. Throughout the Bhagavatam, he's giving us the conclusion of the Bhagavatam, and that's bona fide. That's the Vaishnavacharyas. That's our sampradaya. Is one of bhakti. Therefore, it's relevant to give purports about bhakti. And also it's natural for the pure devotees because they're seeing that within those verses. Like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said that actually in every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, I can see Radharani. I see Radharani in every verse. Or you can see Radharani in every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. That can be quite hard if you're speaking about the Purusha Shukta and universal creation, but the pure devotees have that vision. And why is that? It's because that's the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam concludes with the 10th canto, the pure devotional service exemplified by the gopis and specifically Srimati Radharani. So therefore he's seeing that throughout every verse. So that's the vision of the Acharyas, and that's Prabhupada's vision, and that's why in this purport he's talking about this ekanishta, this pure devotional service. So that was a little bit about the verse and the purport. And I'll carry on with that theme. And like I said, this class will be mainly about Sankirtan, mainly about book distribution. And it is very relevant because Prabhupada talks about this sacrifice meant to please the Supreme Lord, and in the purport is ekanishta, one-focused, one-pointed. And he said, therefore, they practically have no time to seek the benefits of material facilities. So Sankirtan is the perfect training ground or school for pure devotional service, this training ground for this ekanishta bhakti, or one-pointed focus. Obviously, there's a disclaimer: all services are good. Prabhupada said they're all equal, but there was a special place in his heart for Sankirtan. We're going to have a look at some different points as to why and how Sankirtan is the school for pure devotional service, or the school for this learning this ekanishta, one-pointed focus on Krishna. So we're going to go through a few different points, if that's okay. So Sankirtan is one of the only services where there's no obvious return. You go out and no one really cares. And before I say this, Sankirtan, also I mean in general these points are relevant to preaching or sharing Krishna consciousness with others, not just book distribution or Sankirtan. Sankirtan or preaching in general is one of the services where you don't get any obvious return. You go out and people dismiss you, or they don't care who you are. Most of the time you're just a nuisance to people, and you have to take these austerities hot and cold weather, or there's not much question of your own personal pleasure in the service, which makes it a training ground for love, a training ground for pure devotional service. Rupa Goswami says this famous verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu: Anya bilashita shanyam jnana kama jinavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutama. So this Anya bilashita, without any material desires, this service. And Sankirtan is a training ground for that. My spiritual Master often says that he loves Sankirtan because he's a Swami and he gets so much respect from all kinds of people, but when you go out on the street, no one cares if you're a Swami or who you are. They're still going to treat you the same. So he says he loves that because it humbles him, it keeps him, not that he needs to be humbled, but it keeps, no, they don't care who you are, so you get treated in that way. And it pleases Krishna and Prabhupada. It pleases Lord Chaitanya. I'll just tell you a quick story about my spiritual master and his Sankirtan. He was in Canada, in Winnipeg, in winter marathon, and it was minus 20 in the winter, and his hands became frozen. He couldn't actually distribute any more books because his hands couldn't move anymore. So he was praying to Lord Chaitanya, please help me. How can I do Sankirtan? I want to distribute your books, but I can't actually move my hands to give a book or take any Lakshmi from anyone. And then he felt this sensation throughout his hands. They just started to warm up after he made that prayer. And he became so ecstatic, he was just crying in ecstasy. And this person approached him and asked him, why are you crying? And Maharaji explained to him why he was crying. And he took a few books, and he gave all of his money. And then 1 week later, he joined the temple and became a full-time Sankirtan devotee. But that depth, that attracts people, and that makes devotees. Yeah, Sankirtan is a service for selflessness. People are sometimes bewildered when you meet them on the streets. They say, you're not getting paid for this? Are you being paid? Or is this your full-time job? Or, why are you doing this? People can't understand because people don't understand this love. People don't understand service, selfless service. It's not something which is so prominent in the material world. It's, it's even if you're a religious person, generally you approach God for something, for some relief from miseries, for some benefit, some good results or something. But people find it hard to conceive of this pure devotional service, this love without any desire for something in return. So Sankirtan is the school for that. And when we're out there just to serve, when we have that ekanishta, that one-pointed focus, then people are attracted by that devotion. Their hearts are changed. But it requires focus. Like Prabhupada says, it requires this ekanishta. In the Gita, Krishna says, Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. This one-pointed ekeha, one-pointed focus. And there's so many things that can distract us when we're out, when we're preaching. Sankirtan is the school for this focus because there's unlimited distractions, the material energy. There's so many, now it's summer, the latest fashion is to wear as least clothes as possible and get away with it. So there's so many ways to be distracted. But where is the focus? Krishna is watching. And where is our focus? Sankirtan is the school for that. Focusing on Krishna. You're either Krishna conscious or you're not. In the temple services, you can let your mind wander a little bit, and you won't get necessarily completely thrown off. But in Sankirtan, if your mind goes an inch, Antaranga always tells us, one step out of line and that's it, your whole day is gone because one slip in focus and you're completely distracted. One time I was on the street and I was distracted. I was spaced out for some reason, and one guy came up to me and he said, I thought you were supposed to be selling these books. I must have just been stood there kind of like staring. He said, I thought you were supposed to be selling these books. And I was like, yeah, you're right, super self-speaking. And that's another thing on Sankirtan. You get so much reciprocation from Krishna, so much reciprocation. Krishna really speaks to you. And to have that one-pointed focus, we also need to know why we're doing it. Kartik Chandra Prabhu sent us this beautiful voice note while we were on Sankirtan. A few different devotees were sending us encouragement while we were on the marathon. And he sent this amazing realization. I've heard it before, but he kind of reminded us of it, that actually Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that we carry on from where we left off. Right? So wherever you got to in your devotional service, you carry on from there. And so Kartik Chandraprabhu was saying that when you put a book in someone's hand, even if they don't buy the book, even if they don't read it, but even if they're just touching the book, then from the next life they have to carry on. So that means that they have to become a human, they have to come again in contact with the books and touch the books, and from there progress in their devotional service. So maybe then the next life they'll read it. So he said, that's why Prabhupada would always say, even if they just touch the book, there's so much benefit. Even if they don't read, even if they just touch the book. Because Krishna fulfills his promise that you carry on from where you left off. And I thought that was very, very nice. So we need to know why we're doing it, and that's a very good reason to help people in their journey in such a meaningful way. And sometimes we don't realize the depth of what that means to allow someone to have another human life, to save them from whatever they're going through. So Sankirtan is also the training ground of pure devotional service because it attracts Krishna. Krishna says in the Gita, in the 18th chapter, 68th verse, he says that one who explains this secret to others, pure devotional service is guaranteed. And at the end he will come back to me. And then in the next verse he says, there's no one more dear to me. There's no one more dear to me than someone who shares this with others. And I just was reading a conversation with Prabhupada between him and Pradyumna. And Pradyumna asked this question. He said, what if people... And Prabhupada talks about this, about attracting Krishna, about getting a certificate from Krishna. So Pradyumna asked Prabhupada, what if people don't want to hear our message? And Prabhupada said, people might not understand our message, but Krishna will be pleased, and that is our mission. They thought Jesus Christ's mission was stopped. They killed him, but his mission was attained. He preached for 3 years only, but so many followers. He pleased Krishna. We must not be disappointed that no one is hearing Krishna consciousness. We will say it to the moon and the stars and all directions. We will cry in the wilderness. Serve Krishna, worship Krishna. Because Krishna is everywhere, he will hear us. We want to get a certificate from Krishna that this man has done something for me, not popularity. This is a beautiful statement from Prabhupada, this idea of getting a certificate from Krishna, that we've done something meaningful, that we've done something for him. And through preaching, Krishna becomes indebted to his devotees. In the 10th canto, he says to the gopis, Napari ham, I cannot repay you. I cannot repay your service to me. And Prabhupada says about we should also try and act in the same way, that we're being recognized. We get this certificate from Krishna. Krishna says to us, I cannot repay your service, thank you. And Sankirtan, or sharing Krishna consciousness with others, does that. Like Krishna says in the Gita, that you become most dear to him. The most dearest is one who shares it with others. So Sankirtan in that way is the school of pure devotional service. And also by Sankirtan we become qualified for deeper things. This part of the class is a little bit above my qualification, but I'll just share a few things I've heard from my spiritual master. By serving Lord Chaitanya, we actually become qualified for serving Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world. There's a verse, it says, Yata yata gauda padada vinde, vindata bhaktim kritapanya rasi, tata tatot sarpati hridakasmad radha parambosha shridambo rasi. By serving Lord Chaitanya's mission, by serving the preaching mission, we automatically become qualified for serving Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. And this absorption in Sankirtan is non-different to absorption in Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. So in one purport in the 10th canto, Prabhupada makes a very similar point. So this is from 10 to 37. This is a purport. Prabhupada says, one should engage in practical service to the Lord. In our Krishna consciousness movement, all our activities are concentrated upon distributing Krishna literature. This is very important. One may approach any person and induce him to read Krishna literature, so that in the future he may also become a devotee. Such activities will always remind the devotees of the lotus feet of the Lord. By fully concentrating on distributing books for Krishna, one is fully absorbed in Krishna. This is samadhi. So this focus, this ekanishta, like Prabhupada is talking about in the purport, is actually samadhi. It's non-different from being absorbed in Krishna, in Radha and Krishna. So Prabhupada also in the purport speaks about this realization of spiritual identity. How when someone is realized, then they're ready to do anything. They forget any material comforts and they're ready to accept this austerity. And Sankirtan gives us that Bhaktisiddhanta says that preaching gives blood for the spiritual body. By sharing Krishna consciousness, we're actually giving blood for our spiritual body. But we have to hear about it. Preaching also means we have some realization of what we're sharing. It means that we have to hear. We need to know our goal. And then naturally, once we have some love, then it becomes a natural expression of our Krishna consciousness. When you love someone, naturally you want to speak about it. If you just want to talk about it, you want to share it with others, that's a natural expression of Krishna consciousness. So when someone's advanced, naturally they want to share with others because they love Krishna, so you want to share that with others. That's a natural expression of our Krishna consciousness. Jai Shishi Radha Gokulananda Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Shishi Gauranitai Ki Jai. So when we hear about Krishna, when we know about this other world, then we're ready to renounce something. We're ready to accept austerities because we know that there's something better in the future. We know the goal. We're hearing about it. Just like in the ashram, we have a drying room where we hang our gamchas. Is warm because there's a radiator there. So having a cold shower is not so difficult because you know, okay, in a couple of minutes I can go in the warm room and dress myself there. So the austerity becomes easy, right? Because you're looking forward to the warmth. So it's the same in a spiritual life. When we know about where we're going, we know about what we're going to do, all of these things, then it becomes easier to renounce. It becomes easier to perform these austerities for the benefit of others. But if we don't hear enough, if we don't understand, then we just engage in material enjoyment, because even though we might know it leads to suffering, even though people know it's temporary, at least it's something, it's better than nothing. So I might as well do it. It's better. And that's the majority of people in the material world. They know what they're doing is bad. They know it leads to suffering. But anyway, I might as well, because it's better than nothing. At least I have something. But when we know as devotees, when we know about something greater, when we know about another world, then we're ready to accept these austerities. So Sankirtan in that way is also the school of devotional service, because to maintain it we need to go deep, to carry on. We need to get realization. Otherwise the austerity of being out there all day is going to be too difficult and we'll give it up. So that's why Prabhupada was constantly pushing the devotees, read my books as well as distribute them. Don't just sell them, you have to also read them side by side. So the best Sankirtan devotees, they have strong sadhana, they have reading, and they're really living what is being said in the books. My spiritual master often makes this point. He says that the Christians, they just point to Jesus and they say that we'll be saved by him. So we can't become the same. So we have Prabhupada, and Prabhupada will give us a lot of help, but we can't just point to Prabhupada and say he's the pure devotee, and we're not doing it. We also have to live it. We also have to become those things. So my spiritual master, he often makes this point. We can't just point to Prabhupada and become like the Christians, that, okay, he's the pure devotee, he will save us. It doesn't matter how we act. No, we actually have to be realizing these things. We have to live what's being said in these books. And in that way we'll be able to be effective sharers of Krishna consciousness. And there's one more verse in Bhagavatam in the 8th canto. This is Lord Shiva, when he drank the ocean of poison, And they glorify him by saying this verse, Tapyante lokatapena. The great devotees, they accept austerities for the benefit of others. And this is the highest worship of the Lord. They accept this austerity. So after Lord Shiva drank the ocean of poison to save the universe, they glorified him in this way, saying that all great personalities, they naturally will accept austerity for the benefit of others. And what austerity is recommended in Kali Yuga? Harinam Sankirtan, yeah, congregational chanting. Sankirtan means congregational chanting, which means sharing it with others, not just on our own. And Prabhupada was so strong on, like he often made these comments about Radhika and Babajis and people that are just sitting on their own chanting Hare Krishna. He was so strong about going and distributing and going and sharing with others, because this is the mood of the acharyas, this is the mood of the great devotees. They share it with others. Like yesterday actually was Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disappearance day, so we didn't hear about him in class because it was Prabhupada's class, but if we have time I'll say a few words. But he was also an acharya and he was sharing with others. And he wasn't just an acharya, he was also a resident of the spiritual world, descended to this world. He was Ananga Manjari, Radharani's younger sister. So in the spiritual world, they're also doing Sankirtan, they're Tava Katam Ritam Tapta Jivanam. They're also singing about Krishna, sharing Krishna with others. And then they descend to the material world and they also talk about Krishna and share Krishna. So that's what the acharyas do, that's what the residents of the spiritual world do. So sharing Krishna with others is both following the acharyas and the residents of the spiritual world. It's the perfect thing to do. And that's how Sankirtan is the training ground for pure devotional service. So that was a few thoughts I had on Sankirtan. We have some time left, so like I mentioned yesterday was Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disappearance day. But we didn't hear about him, so I can say a few words to glorify him, a few pastimes, and then we'll have some time for questions. But mainly Gopal Bhatta Goswami was all about preaching, just like the 6 Goswamis. That was their main duty in this material world, was to give Krishna, to write books. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami was no different to that. He had so many disciples, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually told him, you must accept disciples. He didn't want to, he was very humble. He didn't want to accept any disciples, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered him, so on Lord Chaitanya's order he accepted many disciples. And actually we don't hear, out of all the Goswamis, we probably hear about Gopal Bhatta Goswami the least. Everyone knows Rupa Goswami, everyone knows Sanatana Goswami, but we hear very little about Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and that's because of his humility. So when Krishnadas Kaviraj was writing Chaitanya Charitamrita, before he wrote, he went to all of the Goswamis of Vrindavan and he asked for their blessings. That I'm going to write, I've been instructed to write this book, please give me your blessings. So he went to all of the Goswamis and they all gave them their blessings. And then he came to Gopal Bhatta Goswami and asked for his blessings. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami said, yes, you have my blessings, but on one condition, you cannot mention me at all in your book. So that was his humility. He didn't want to be mentioned. So that's why we don't hear of him. But in other scriptures it does speak about him. And Krishnadas Kaviraj does write about him a little bit in kind of subtle ways. But anyway, just a bit of background. He was the son of Venkata Bhatta. So when Lord Chaitanya went on his South India tour, he visited South India and he stayed in the house of Venkata Bhatta in Sri Rangam, which for quite a long time, he was there for a couple of months. And during that time, Venkata Bhatta had a son, and his son was Gopal Bhatta. And so he would massage the feet of Lord Chaitanya while he was staying in the house. He would render all sorts of intimate services for Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya became very pleased with this. He was only a 10-year-old boy at the time. He became very pleased. And he spoke to him about Krishna, about very intimate things. And it's quite amazing. It's described that he was talking to him about his eternal identity, about the spiritual world, about all these very esoteric. And this is a conversation with a 10-year-old boy, so you can understand he's no ordinary 10-year-old boy. So he's having all these deep conversations with Lord Chaitanya. Actually that was the last time he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for his whole life. When he was 10 years old, after that time Lord Chaitanya went back to Jagannath Puri, and he instructed Gopal Bhatta that you look after your parents, and after they leave, then you go to Vrindavan and you preach there. And so he did, even though he could have gone to Jagannath Puri and seen the Lord, but he didn't. He went to Vrindavan to preach. And that shows actually the importance of Vani, this following the instructions of the spiritual master above the Vapu, or the physical presence, because even though he could have seen the Lord, he could have been with the Lord, he decided, actually let me follow the instructions and go to Vrindavan and preach as the Lord has asked me. Okay, just a couple more pastimes, we have a little bit of time. So Gopal Bhatta is famous for his deities. He's famous for the temple of Radharaman. Many of you probably know it's one of the most well-known temples in Vrindavan, the Radharaman temple. This was Gopal Bhatta's deity, and he started this temple, he started the worship there. And how the deity came about is a very interesting story. It's quite well known, some of you might know it. So Gopal Bhatta got some shilas. He went to Nepal, he went to the river. What's the river called? The Gandaki. The Gandaki river. And in this river in Nepal there's lots of self-manifesting deities. There's lots of shalagram shilas, self-manifesting form of the Lord. And so he was instructed to go there and pick some shilas to begin worship. So he took some shilas from this river and he began to worship them. But he was with all the other Goswamis, and all the other Goswamis at the time, they had their deities, like Radha Govinda and nice Radha Krishna deities, or Krishna. And he was thinking, it would also be kind of nice if I could dress, because shilas is very simple. Prabhupada said about shalagram worship, he said, it's mantra to wake, bathe, then mantra to sleep. he said that's the worship of shalagrams. It's very simple, but also very elevated. And in one purport, Prabhupada actually said, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he said that I'm waiting, because he didn't introduce shalagram, shila worship during his time on the planet. And in one purport he says, I'm waiting for the time when I see that my disciples are on the pure Brahminical platform, then I'm going to introduce shalagram worship. So actually shalagram is very elevated worship, even though it's very, very simple. So he was worshipping these shilas and had this desire that it would be also nice to dress the Lord and offer him peacock feather and turban and a flute and all of these things. So he was praying to his shilas that I would love to dress you. And then one day a rich merchant came and he gave him some cloth for deities. He gave him all of the paraphernalia. He gave him nice cloth and turbans and flute and all these things for worshipping a deity. And then he really was like, okay, like now I really... And then it came to Nrsimhadev's appearance day. And then it really he gave an ultimatum. He really kind of boiled over, because in Vrindavan at the time, everyone was speaking about how the Lord came out of a stone pillar. And so he was thinking, okay, for Prahlad you came out of a stone pillar, so why can't you also come out of a stone for me? I wish I was Prahlad. He was praying in this way. And so he gave this ultimatum to his shilas. He said that, okay, if you don't, and obviously this is for pure devotees, we can't interact with the deities in this way, but he said to his deities that if you don't come to me in a form where I can dress you, then I'm going to tie you up, I'm going to tie you all up, I'm going to put you around my neck, and I'm going to jump into the Ganges and drown myself. So if this doesn't happen by the time I get back from my bath, then that's it. That's the plan. So he told his deities this, and then he went for his bath, and he came back, and this form had arisen. There's a few versions of this same story, but this is one version. And a form had arisen of Radharaman. Radharaman, it said that all three deities of Vrindavan are present within this one deity. Radharaman is very, very beautiful. And so he was very happy, and that's how Radharaman and the worship started, and he started the temple. He initiated many disciples, and it all began from there. So that's a little bit about Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Gopal Bhatta Goswami ki jai. So yeah, we're coming up to past. There's a couple of minutes left. If there's any questions or comments, corrections, I'll be happy to take them. Antaranga has a question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Such a wonderful class.
Sure.
It seems like you've been giving classes for years now. One question I have, when we do Sankirtan, you said that it's a practice for pure, unalloyed devotional service. Yet speaking for myself, I do Sankirtan for myself. I go through all these austerities, and I'm ready to admit it. I do all these austerities for my benefit. I put myself in that heat of that tapasya and renunciation and difficulties and rain and struggles and cold and all these things, so I can harvest something. So how can we actually change this mentality from thinking, even amongst those difficulties, about ourselves, and rather thinking about the living souls out there, and even maybe for the glory of Guru, Gauranga, Prabhupada?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I also don't have deep realization on this. But firstly, I think it's probably your humility that you're saying that. Because, like we were discussing in class, to sustain something for a period of time, you have to have some realization about it. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. But also, we understand that there's gradations of service. So in the beginning, most of the time we're doing it for our own benefit, and then above that we're doing it for purification. We're doing it for our own purification. And then above that we develop a deeper level, so we're doing it out of compassion. We actually see the suffering of people, and we're doing it out of compassion, we're doing it out of... And then above that we're just doing it for Krishna's pleasure, we're doing it for love. So there's gradations of service, and that, from what I've heard, gradually develops over time. Yeah, it just takes some small introspection, really, that when you just go out there and you see people's condition, and we were discussing this as well during the marathon, that when you just look at people, you can see the suffering, you can see the condition, and naturally it would be selfish if you don't try and share something with them and help them. So it just takes a little bit of thought and observation. Another question?
Just want to... You haven't shared any sort of a reflection from your marathon, or your realization, or maybe story or a pastime?
A story? Okay. Yeah, there's one interesting story I can share. How people are naturally attracted to Krishna. So there was this one lady who came up, and she said, she just pointed out the Science of Self-Realization. Science of Self-Realization. It's actually one of the most attractive books for people in general. It has this beautiful picture of the Super Soul on the front, and people are always attracted to it. But anyway, she just came up and she said, "What's that?" And she's just pointing at the Science of Self-Realization. "What's that?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a form. It's Vishnu. It's a form of the Lord that we worship." And she said, "Oh, that's very interesting, because sometimes when I meditate, then I see this image. Actually, I'm seeing this. When I meditate, I see this. I see the blue. I see." She was even saying, "I see the lotus flower, everything." And I was like, "Wow!" She's seeing the super soul. I mean, I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Whether, people sometimes say things. But anyway, whatever it is, she was very attractive, and she bought the book. And so people are naturally attracted to Krishna. But it's very, very amazing. Yeah, that's one story. Nishkansha, you have a question? We're over time. If anyone needs to go for breakfast, you're welcome to go.
You mentioned earlier on about Ekanishta. How do you develop Ekanishta in your practices and service.
Okay. Wow. That's a deep question. Me personally, how do I develop Ekinishta, or how do we in general?
Well, you can speak from your personal example.
Yeah, it's very elevated. But for me, I always take the example of my spiritual master. I look to him and how he served, and how he inspires others to serve, and I take that as inspiration for anything I do. He has this beautiful book of Sankirtan inspirations. This is where I took most of my material for this class, a small book. On every marathon he would send a message to devotees every day for some kind of inspiration, and he just giving this message of pure devotional service and how sharing that with others is so powerful. So yeah, all my inspiration comes from there.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice class.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, just continuing on Antaranga's question. Yeah, I mean, Sankirtan has different layers, like you were saying, different aspects to it. First one is that Sankirtan purifies the ether, the planet. And then it purifies the hearts of the individual living entities. And then most of all, it purifies the performer of Sankirtan. So the person who performs the Sankirtan gets the most benefit, because it's the Yuga Dharma. So there's nothing wrong with going out thinking, I want to go out because I want to get benefit, because it's the Yuga Dharma. Because the person who's performing it is performing devotional service, Gyata Sukriti, not Agyata. The people you're giving to, they're performing a Gyata Sukriti. You're performing devotional service in knowledge, so therefore you get the most benefit. But of course the benefit comes by giving to others as well.
Yeah.
So it's both things. So Sankirtan actually, everyone's a winner.
Yeah.
Even the planet.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with going out for your own benefit. I mean, I do the same. You get, or at least I can see it in all the services I've done, you get, not that I've done many, but you get the most reciprocation from Krishna when you're out on the street. Little magic experiences like the one I just shared is constantly happening. That's so blissful to experience.
And then as we advance, then we can think more of others
More
as
of
well.
it, yeah.
But it's a good thing to go out thinking, I'm getting benefit.
Yeah, either way, my spiritual master says it's the fast track. It's the fast track. Yes, Ruben.
Just a small comment, as Pramana Prabhu was saying. I heard once in a class, I think it was Devamrita Maharaj, she said, if you want to become really selfish, become selfless. And it's always kind of, what other way, if you want to be really selfish, go and help other people, and that's the most selfish thing you can do.
Such a good point.
Yeah,
Such a nice point.
So I'd encourage Antaranga to carry on being selfish.
Yeah. Actually, that's such a nice point. We can all experience when we do something selflessly, when we're really trying to help someone, or really trying to serve, we're really trying to do something selfless, then you get so much reciprocation, you feel so much mercy, you feel so much bliss in the service when you really... Yes, sir.
If you were just to read the purport of 10 to 37, the last paragraph, and kind of summarizes, another thing is following the will of our Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. Just the last purport.
Yeah, I read that. That's the one okay, the very... Yeah. Such activities will always... From... Oh, I don't have that much. I only have one should engage in practical. Maybe you can read it.
My pronunciation. The word kriyasya means by manual labor or by work is important in this verse. One should engage in practical service to the Lord. In our Krishna conscious movement, all our activities are concentrated upon distributing Krishna literature. This is very important. One may approach any person and induce him to read Krishna literature so that in the future he also may become a devotee. Such activities are recommended in this verse. Kriyasya yastyak charanara vindayo. Please forgive my pronunciation. Such activities will always remind the devotees of the Lord's lotus feet. And here's the last part. By fully concentrating on distributing books for Krishna, one is fully absorbed in Krishna. This is samadhi. Summarizing the whole process of becoming selfless, it's some very nice instructions to follow the will of and please the devotees. Then naturally our heart will become soft and we'll develop a compassionate mood.
Thank you, Jai. Any final questions or comments? Okay, so in conclusion, we should go out, whether we're going out for selfish reasons or whether we're going out for non-selfish reasons or whatever, we should share Krishna consciousness with others. And in that way we're following the acharyas, we're following the residents of the spiritual world. And we're doing the best thing possible. Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki